Policeman coming to the end of his 15-minute beat or circuit. He walked into the square and he found a body. That body was the body of a woman. Her name was Catherine Eddowes. She was 46 years of age, and she had been brutally murdered in the square just a short time before the policeman discovered her. He was called P.C. Edward Watkins, and he was a City of London police constable. On his 15-minute circuit or beat, every 15 minutes he came back through Mitre Square. There'd be nothing here at 1:30 to cause any alarm, and then at 1:44, 14 minutes later, he came back through the square, and there, on the pavement over there was the body of Catherine Eddowes, this 46-year-old common prostitute, because that was her calling in life. She was a common prostitute, and she had lost her life here in the square, cut to pieces by the assassin's knife. Now, I'll return to the story of Catherine Eddowes and what happened in the square in a moment, but just so that you know who the victims were. One killer, 5 victims that we're sure of. The first victim fell to his knife on the last day of August 1888, the 31st of August, and that was Polly Nichols, a 43-year-old common prostitute working the streets of the East End, lost her life in Bucks Row in Whitechapel. 8 days later, 47-year-old Annie Chapman died. She was the oldest of the 5 victims. She was, again, a common prostitute. She was living in a doss house, a common lodging house in Hanbury Street in Spitalfields. Her body was found in the yard at the back of the house in the early hours of the morning of the 8th of September. Then 3 weeks elapsed, the very last day of the month, the 30th of September. And that was when 2 bodies were found in one night. The body here in Mitre Square was the second one to be found. The earlier body was found not in the square, but on the other side where you hear the church bells ringing, down there in Commercial Road. There's a little side street there called Berners Street, and that was where the body of Elizabeth Stride had been discovered. Elizabeth Stride, born in Sweden, plied her trade here in London. She was 44 years of age. Her body was found in a passageway leading from Berners Street to an old yard, and that's where she was found, pushed up against the curb. Within the hour, the second body, Catherine Eddowes, as I mentioned, found here in Mitre Square by the policeman P.C. Watkins. So there we have 5 women who had died. Now, what about the last one, the 5th one? Well, we had to wait 5 weeks for that. 5 more weeks, right the way through October and into early November, the 9th of November, the eve of the Lord Mayor's show. And that was when the body of a much younger woman was discovered, and her name was Mary Kelly. She was only 23, and she was found in Miller's Court, Spitalfields. That was the house that she rented, the room that she rented. And I'll take you there on our travels tonight, and I'll show you where that murder took place. So 5 women who died, all died in the same way. The killer would take his victim and he would strangle them until the point at which they were unconscious. And the unconscious woman was no longer struggling, screaming or shouting. She was silent and she was still, and she would be laid down on her back. The killer knelt by her head, would take a short, pointed blade and cut the throat from left to right, so deeply, almost decapitating his victim. So that's why the strength that was used indicate that it probably was a man who committed these 5 crimes, not Jill the Ripper but Jack the Ripper. The depth of the cut, very deep cut, that was the cause of death in each case. So the victim bleeding, dead and bleeding on the ground, he would then switch to a longer, different knife, and he would reach down from the head down to the base of the abdomen. He'd rip it open using that knife, and that's how he would then start to disembowel his victims, placing body parts around the shoulders and the head of his victim. And then when he had done what he needed to do, he would then disappear from the scene. Sometimes he would take a body part with him, and that's exactly what happened here at Mitre Square. This poor woman, Catherine Eddowes, her left kidney was removed, and the killer took it with him because it was never found with the body at the scene. But it does turn up later in our story, so just hold that thought of this left kidney, because I'll mention it again.